All right, great. I'm John Pavane. I'm actually president of MaxQ Technologies. We're a 36-year-old software development company and bar. We've been dealing with Acumatica for about 7 years now, and about 4+ years ago started building a cannabis module to address the specific needs of the cannabis business that are really somewhat unique. And subsequently that we've been building this. We have a wide range of customers that go across. We're all in North America right now. We have some companies who are expanding to Europe, but for the most part, we're focused heavily in North America, US and Canada, and in multiple states, multi-state operators. This product has been built on Acumatica, which I believe you're running on now. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I'll skip a lot of the standard Acumatica stuff, but if anything comes up, let me know. So cannabis has multiple functions to it. Our primary, focus is around extensive cultivation. So if we were to come in, and I know we're not going to spend too much time on this, but just so you're aware, we have complete all the steps within cultivation. They've been broken out in individual processes and workflows associated with everything from cloning, seeds, or tissue culture, all the way through to packaged flower, byproducts. And then byproducts also could be transferred to what I will call manufacturing or extraction, but where you're making vape cartridges, elixirs, gummies, other processes that you need within to produce cannabis products. We've also heavily invested in integrations to industry standard products, and we'll go through some of those, but things like wholesale trade for Leaf Trade and Leaflink, a bunch of point of sale systems, as well as Confident Cannabis for quality. We've built our own quality module within this system, and things like Metric Health Canada, and we're about to start, Oregon has their own system, or Washington, I forget which one we're doing, to process all that. So the first thing we'll point out here, and again, depending on what you're doing, I've seen people have flavored vape cartridges, and I have other people who will use terpenes to be entered into the particular solution as they package vapes. So we can handle both of those. But the first thing that we have out here is a strain master. And I also have people that produce strain specific oils and follow them through to the end product. At other times, once it's decarboxylated and the terpenes are taken off, it doesn't matter, and you're just getting generic crude and generic distillate that you'll use later to create vapes. But the purpose of this is, one, we have to report this to Metric. So in the system, we're a believer that Acumatica becomes the system of record, and we push data, in some cases pull it, but for the most part, we want all the transactions that are needed that we can report to be automatically sent to Metric in the background, so you're maintaining one system and you're hitting your compliance. So on here, you can have any number of strains. Now, I do have people who built this using flavors like grape, watermelon, and other things along their cartridges, and it takes a specific set of related inventory IDs. Now, these are standard inventory IDs in Acumatica that have some enhancements been made for the cannabis industry. So since you're using inventory now and you're buying product, this should be familiar to you. Now, we've got these. This is in extraction pens. We're doing lot receipts. We've built this to have a strain specific. We have put inventory types for cannabis into here, and you would set these up, or we would help you set these up for whatever your needs are. And then these are also related back to Metric. I can group multiple items with a prefix and a name code. I could exclude things, I could require lab results. I could stop things from going to metric. I could stop the copy and kit creations, but these items would represent all of your individual, especially THC containing items. So maybe you'd have distillate, or maybe you start off and buy just distillate, but you'll have individual vapes, and then maybe even packaged vapes. They might have multiple types. We'll set those up as needed. But the types also help us dictate what the process code is for regulatory reporting, specifically in metric. Then we also have the ability to do sizes, THC ranges, PNZ. This is a European pharmaceutical number. Brands, we support multiple brands. And in addition to that, we have the ability to do labeling throughout the system. So we'll do labeling, barcode, QR code, depending on what your needs are, both in manufacturing and in cultivation. So in a manufacturing item, you may have ingredients that are not related to the THC and CBD content. So you want the flavorings, coconut oil, whatever other things you're using to package those items will be replaced here. We have a number of different formats. And now you can see also we have a whole bunch of other items here that are wrap around defining the product that can be used to feed your website or mobile app. I have customers that use this for mobile apps, and when they have a consumer trying to find where they can buy their product or what they're looking for, these will help define the cannabis product outright. And then if you're going to get into, and are you familiar with any of these other ones like Leaflink, Leaftrade, Leaflogic type items?
Leaflink.
Yeah, we work with Leaflink.
Okay, so we have full integration into Leaflink. Let me call up one of those items. I think I've got that here. So in this system, you would define the integration. We'll show how that gets set up a little bit later, but you would come in and enter different values here that we will feed to Leaflink automatically. So we'd set up a process in Acumatica that says every couple minutes, I want you to sync anything that has changed that it would affect my catalog in Leaflink. And you also can set to set the available quantities of inventory of items going to Leaflink. Now, in those particular cases, when we come into, for example, the Leaflink setup here, this is where in Leaflink we're going to define our key and we've just been sleeping here for the demo, but here we're putting what our access token is, how do we log in, and then the default settings in Acumatica, and then the ability to do mapping, who controls what. So for example, product lines in Leaflink, it doesn't exist in Acumatica. If you want to use the subcategory, item class, or set up your own attribute. And then the same thing with the order creation is when the order goes to the Leaflink status accepted, it automatically gets created in Acumatica. And then you would go through the process of fulfilling it in Acumatica on a sales order basis. And then when you ship it, we update that information back to Leaflink when you invoice. And then even when the order gets, then the invoice gets paid, that goes back up to Leaflink. So we control that whole seamless integration. And then the same thing here, Leaflink payments versus payment methods, and then subcode strain mappings to make sure they match up between the systems. So then on that whole integration here, all these things are running, whether I'm sending categories or product maintenance, and they get scheduled. A process Leaflink orders will wake up and process accordingly. And then same thing with product synchronization. You would set this up to run on a periodic basis. And that works across similar to different other cannabis types of integration that we need, including Confident Cannabis, which is an aggregator of lab results and COAs. So this will go out and pull in all of the COAs, passed or failed lab results, and report the lab results back here and attach the certificate of acceptance PDF so that we can send to the customer and prove that this has been approved by a third-party independent testing lab. So we work with Confident Cannabis. We also work with Steepill, which some states, Confident Cannabis doesn't have the integration. Now, am I making sense here? This is very cannabis specific. If you're not too into it, I just want to make sure I'm not going down the wrong path here.
You guys integrate with any of the delivery guys like Ease and stuff like that?
We have not to date. We do point of sale like Greenbits, Leaflogix, but again, we've got a list of integrations we're doing right now. I had a meeting with Lucid Technologies the other day, which is doing QR codes for delivery to the dispensaries, so there doesn't have to be repacked. They're trying to become the standard way to authorize that. So we're constantly working on them, and we actually will deliver what our customer needs. But right now, we have not done delivery, guys, yet.
Just kind of curious on a lot of these, some of these partners you're scoping potential integrations with and stuff. What kind of systems are they running? ERP.
What they're running?
You know?
They're all on point. They're all on their own. Like Metric, for example, it's their own stuff they built, and in some cases it's pretty terrible. Like Metric, when you make an API call, they don't ever tell you if it worked or not. It's up to you to figure out if it did. I never heard of that. Right? I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So, and even with and again, I'll be candid here with Leaflink. Leaflink's pretty good, but they use a product, a type of technology called webhooks to push the order to us, which is great. So it's almost instantaneous. As soon as you save it in Leaflink, it fires here and shows up in Acumatica. It works really nicely, except for if you're maintaining your system. Then I'm like, well, what happens if you can't deliver? They're like, okay, well, we don't do anything. So we built another synchronization that wakes up and says, hey, every hour or two, just make sure we didn't miss any orders in case the systems weren't together. You know, I'm like, I can't just lose orders, guys. You know, that's not acceptable. So we've had to do a lot of that lack of maturity in this marketplace to get around some of those things. Even they don't really have great, like Greenbits doesn't even have great part numbers. They do everything off the package tags. So we've had to do a lot of work to how do you minimize the impact of not having a real part number to do with some of those things. Now the same thing, and for those of you who recognize this, when we're in Metric, for example, we can set up multiple integrations, multiple states, and this is we're just going to connect, and we could load the facilities, employees, test types, and a few other things from Metric automatically. And then on the Metric facility, this is where we're going to link the Metric license to either a specific branch or to a site in Acumatica or a warehouse. So that is our most granular level, and we know that if it's moving between sites, we got to create transfers and do all those things. But on the Metric side, we can import all of these items, and then we could sync things, and then we could send select. So again, this is something we set up to happen automatically. But in this case, we relate the strains. We can create strains, or we relate the strains to what's in Metric. The same thing with items. An item in Metric can be, let me get it, one that has some data. An item in Metric can be many in Acumatica to one in Metric, many Metric ones to one in Acumatica. We support both. We allow you to go in and say, create them automatically if not there. So we have a lot of, built-in things here that do all of the things you're going to do in Metric. And then even when we get into some of the other things, you can come in here and we can even turn off specific functions that you don't want to send. So the system's going to send everything once you set it up right. And then if you want to come off and say, I never want you to send adjustments, I'll do them manually, you can turn that off by Metric license. So we're pretty granular in what we allow you to do, and I think relatively mature in that Metric integration. And we continue to enhance it all the time. Now, Let's go in and any questions so far, or is making sense, or I'll
No
take
questions
that.
on my side.
Okay, so let's go look at something. I've got a vape pen that I set up, and this is our lot traceability system. So I'm just going to pick a lot. So this is going back for something that I made. So this is a finished vape cartridge, and you can see that to make this, and one of the reasons I did this is to see the chain here. I started off with some blended decarboxylated trim that I purchased. Now I saw on your website you guys do a lot with fresh frozen. That's fine. You know, in the dry trim, you might get 1 gram of crude for every 5 grams of trim, and you know, with fresh frozen you're going to use 20 to 25 grams to do the same thing. I also have a customer who was cold pressing the fresh frozen to extract to do the extraction as opposed to a hydrocarbon or CO2 extraction. But in this case, it's giving me complete traceability from it does both forward and backwards, but it's saying, hey, I sold one of those to this customer on this sales order, and it lets me drill into that. It shows me here's the cartridge that I sold, and if I go into the line details, you're going to see the package. Well, in this case, it's just on the line. On the shipper, it'll show you the actual number, but that was the item I sold. It was made on this particular production order, so I made 1,000 of these units. And have you seen Acumatica manufacturing before? Anybody? Or
Yeah, I've seen some short versions.
okay, all right. So I'll walk through this quickly. This was a manufacturing order that we're making, the vape pens in 0.5 milliliter. We made 1,000 of these. It was scheduled to run on this date. We didn't have any related orders, and then we had events. So Acumatica has realistically 4 events, I guess 5 different events that could affect a production order. The first one is we issued the material. Drilling down, I issued distillate THC to make that vape cartridge. Now, more than likely, I'm going to have some other things in there, whether you're doing, again, flavoring or terpenes or something else. But I had a number of items scheduled to be back flushed. Can you guys hear me?
Yep,
Yeah.
I hear you. Mm-hmm.
Hello? Yeah.
Hey, John, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
I can now. Yeah, you guys went out for a second.
Okay. You just ended with the backlash, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So in this case, we had vape cartridge inserts, vape box, cartridge labels. Probably should have had a cartridge, if I was doing this, really, and some other flavorings associated here. But back flushing is a concept that says, I'm not going to issue the material. Just assume for every card I made, I use these items. Just a way to do less work on your part. And of course, these things come with the ability to see even the detail level items as to what happened. And let me get this page to be bigger. And if I go to the inventory reference, this is going to be an issue batch from Acumatica here. And if I go to the financials, you can see it's going to be, I'm crediting inventory and debiting WIP. And depending on how many WIP accounts I have and what I'm trying to do, but in this case, we're consuming inventory, putting into WIP. And then later when we complete the order, we debit inventory and credit WIP. So we're capitalizing those items as we go along. It also produced a cost batch. And on the cost batch, this we have the 1,000 we made. You can do this by operation. So if I have a multi-step process and want to track it through that. Now, if I'm doing some curing that may take a week or two, then I probably want to do that. I want to know what it went out of any work that I'm doing, extraction, and then I'm going to let it cure. So I may want to track that. But if it's a short duration, a lot of times you'll just report the final operation. When you do the final operation, it does a completion into inventory, and it also does an issue of all the backflushed items by operation. So anything that happened earlier, it assumes you did and moves those costs. If we had overhead and or labor, if the labor was backflushed, that would also been put into the cost batch here. And on that cost batch, we also can get overhead items. Now, the overhead items in your case might be supervisor labor, electricity, licensing, whatever's a cost that you want to capitalize. In that case, we would typically recommend you set up an overhead transfer account. And as the items are issued, we would be issuing a credit against the expense, such as rent or electric, based on the code that you put there, as well as debiting WIP, and then that gets capitalized when you do the move transaction.
But John, that whole process we just described, though, is standard manufacturing flow, right? There's nothing that's cannabis specific there.
In that case, no. You're absolutely correct. So what we've added here, am I supposed to only stay with the cannabis specific? You guys help me out.
I'm happy.
I'm familiar with the discrete manufacturing. Like, you have bombs and standard costs and
right.
backflushing.
Okay.
Yeah, I was wondering on like food processing and stuff. Like if it's a little bit more artisanal, right? You don't know if the guy's using, 1 kilogram of the plant material or 2 kilograms on this batch, and he might kind of be making recipes on the fly.
Sure. So there's a couple aspects that I'll show you what we do there. The answer to that is yes and no. I mean, we know what he's got to issue because in the metric states, you got to count for every single gram that you're using.
Yeah.
So we'll know what biomass is happening, but you're absolutely correct in that it's not, I don't put 0.5 grams of this and 2 grams of that and get the same result every time, right? The yield will be very different. It's a biological, so it's not homogeneous, and we will do different things. You'll get different yields and have to do different results by batch. But the end result, once you get distillate, though, is strictly discrete. I'm taking, a distillate item and I'm mixing that with whatever. If I have to change the potency, I'll show you how we do that a little bit. But what we've added in the standard manufacturing is the ability you would scan your package tag against your production order. We report that to metric as you issue the materials. We consume them at a metric, make this lot. We allow you to do lab results and labels against this. And we report the finishing and that we made this new package from these other packages on metric just by performing the moves in the standard discrete manufacturing. That makes sense?
Yeah, so what I'm seeing is basically you're completing your work order, attaching the lab results, and then printing the labels for. Yeah. So they come off the line with the labels attached.
You can do that here, yeah. So we can print labels from the production order. If I go into the lab results.
That kind of assumes that they have access to these systems on the line. Right.
Well, you give it rights to say, well, where do I want to create the lab results, right?
Mm-hmm.
So typically what they're doing is they would click that button. We will take that package tag and we will create this record here. Let me get a manufactured item. We would create the record here. So what inventory I make? In this case, I'm making elixir. This is the package tag that I'm making it against. The lab comes in and takes its samples, which you would issue those. He gives you a package tag. You report that here. If you need to put a specimen or a sample away, matching that, some states require that. You could do that here. We then report that to metric. And then as you get in all of your results, we can fill these out. Now, some of these wouldn't apply to some of these are plant specific type stuff, but we also then can use those outside services to bring this in. When we're on these particular items here, we have the ability to then attach the COAs based on that. If you're using like Confident Cannabis, that's done automatically. And then when you ship it, I'll go through some of the functionality there in the shipment, but the where we will offer repacks and consolidated COAs automatically sent, some other things. So in here, if I come in and print a manufacturing label, you can see, I'm sure you can read that, right? You can see we're pulling the THC percentage off of the lab results and pulling the information that I put on that item that I showed you before. We're pulling the batch, the lot, the expiration date, and you can print whatever you want on here.
Yep.
So these are all provided. We have lots of labels, and you could print them from the lab result, if that made sense, to answer your question before. We also allow you to print package barcode labels. So if I'm putting, 12 of these in a case, I can print a case label and be able to scan that case label. I know that there's 12 eaches in that box without having to scan the individual product. So you can actually case label them also from within the system. And then we allow you to have your own additional lab results. If you did any internal, you could attach here. There's some crazy stuff like in Nevada, you got to put a soil amendment and attach it here. You could do that. You could add your own set of fields here. And then as we go down and package this stuff, let me just find something here. We will, as you change these, anything that gets made from the base package, we track here, and that's how we know what COA to pull. So anything that is subsequently made through a production order or through a kit that's relying on this for the COA, we will automatically list in the related packages.
A lot of the logic of lot and serial number tracking in ACM, you're riding off of that to do all this.
That we use the lot number
reporting.
for all to track all the metric tags with customizations. Yes.
Yeah.
So in Acumatica, that metric package tag and plant tags are stored in the lot field.
Okay.
Now there's an extension to that you can, which we add attributes and other data points on there, but that's in effect how that's being done. When we come over back to production orders, and I just want to show you what we started before. We have some potency, I'm sorry, I picked the wrong one. Some potency events in here. So what we've done is, I'm going to go to an existing production order. I'm going to go into production order detail. You could see here, I'm going to make gummies, right? It doesn't matter what it is, the process. I've got 5 different operations on it. Obviously, again, this is standard manufacturing. I can come in and say, for these operations, what do I need and what am I using? But if I go back to mixing, we've built this potency calculation in here. And it's not, I wouldn't say the most sophisticated thing, but if I said the distillate came in at only 95% of the expected potency, it knows it has to increase distillate and decrease coconut oil to adjust for that change to get the person to be able to mix the right batch to keep at the produced THC level that I have to by state mandate or what our product I've committed it to be. So that automatically will adjust those items. And again, you're going to be utilizing any differences if you didn't get the target distillate right and be able to change. So the same thing here in isolate, it's going to go in and do, again, it's adjusting these items based on the changes of the expected potency. So other than that, and I'm not going to save that, but other than that, labels, lab results, attaching the production order number, the generation, and I didn't touch on this, but when we're here back on the strain master, when you go up and set a new strain, you just hit the plus here and do that, but you hit create items. I'm not going to do this, but I'll just say this. to create items, all you do is this, and you hit OK. It'll go out and generate all of the items based on that item as a template. The same thing with bombs. It goes out and generates all the bombs for you, and it'll go out and generate all the kits. So to set up a new series of items, utilizing any one of these as a template, it does that automatically for you. We found that when people have a lot of strains, trying to get them to create all the products right in a consistent manner with similar IDs and costing, and get the bombs right and all that, we generate them for you. And we have people using that for a wide range of different things, not just what you would consider a cannabinoid, a strain or a genetics on a particular biomass, but we've got them for flavorings and other things where you have a family of items that maybe you're packaging the same way in multiple sizes. You just want to clone them and get them set up correctly. And then again, obviously, as we talked about, any adjustments or any inventory transactions have to be reported to Metric. They're going to automatically go. Now, I'm going to go in and I don't know, how much do you know about shipping and stuff within requirements for Metric?
Nothing. I don't know anything.
Okay.
I don't either.
All right, that's fair enough. Let me just show you a couple things here, because this is where we get huge customer sat numbers off of these functions, because it saves so much time. So in Metric, and we won't walk through the whole thing, but in Metric, the Leaflink orders will show up here automatically. If I go back to, here's an example of one. So this order was created from Leaflink, the Leaflink order number, and if you go to Leaflink, you'll see the Acumatica number and the stuff going back and forth. But on this last item here, one of the things that Metric makes you do is, if I sell you a cannabis item and I have a package tag on it that isn't fully consumed, I have to repack it. So it says if I have, 500 grams of something and I'm only selling 300, I have to give it a new package tag and relabel it and report that to Metric. So we allow you to do that here automatically. So in Acumatica, you guys probably know how to create a shipment. It could be automated, most of these functions. But in this shipment, I would come in and pick whatever serial numbers we're going to use here. I can't use that. It's already allocated. Nothing available of that one. So I'm picking the Metric tags here. And this is what it's labeled presently on here. Now, if I click save, now if I go into repack, this is a MaxQ screen. It's going to let me come in here, and I'm just going to pick. You would scan your first package tag, assign the numbers. I click save, release. So what this did is this just built these new numbers from the old numbers. So we have the original package tag, what's left. And if we come back into shipments, we now have that replaced with the new number. We reference the old number, and then we report all that to Metric. So the next thing we can do is say consolidate COAs, and this will go out and get any of the COAs that I have automatically in those lab results and put them in a file for you. And then the last thing we do is on this here, this is the manifest, and this takes a fair amount of time to complete manually in Metric. You would just then fill in, well, what vehicle is it being sent on, who's the driver, and what the departure time is, and then you can then automatically create the manifest template in Metric that saves you so much time. So I've got individuals telling me that they are saving anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes in order because of these functions built into our system. I've got someone told me that paid for the system itself, this alone. So this is the pain that you don't know about to some degree, obviously, yet until you're stuck doing it. And that's where we've spent our time optimizing how best to do this. All right, so I'm gonna take a breath, answer questions, things you want to see that you haven't, or
Hey, John. So,
yes,
if we're changing costing methodology, let's say from FIFO to like average costing,
yes.
how does your like module, I guess, gets affected by that?
Well, the cost method that you're discussing is on the item level.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got routines to help you do that, to switch it. But basically, you got to remove all the inventory, change the valuation method, and receive it back into inventory. It's the only way you can do it in Acumatica. After that, depending on what this method is here, right? Standard, average. More people use that than anything else in manufacturing. And then when you're in production orders, on the production order themselves, again, this is straight Acumatica. You use, if it's standard cost, everything goes in at standard. So any different, you probably know this, right? Any different from standard is going to be put as a period cost. If it's actual, it'll use either the estimated cost. So what, based on the BOM when you created the order or what you updated, what do we think it's going to cost when I receive it? Or if I use actual, it flushes all the WIP costs on the first receipt. So if I don't do partials, actual is better. If I do partial receipts, actual could be very disruptive if I ever consume the inventory before I complete the entire production order, because it flushes all of the costs per date, and theoretically that's going to be all your material you probably issued at once, and then if I'm doing 1,000 units and I receive 100, in estimate you're going to get the estimated cost for 100, and actually you're going to get all the costs for the first 100, and then obviously if you complete the 1,000, then the actual becomes correct. So the combination of this costing method and the inventory items valuation method dictates the accounting.
Okay. Yeah. So production is just between standard and actual, but the ending valuation of inventory depends on how you set it up at the item level.
That is correct.
Okay.
So the debit to inventory when you complete a production order will be dictated by which one of these you pick. And then the difference between that and the WIP value will probably be booked to an expense, depending on what it's actually doing. And so if you think about it, and I've had a lot of discussions with different people, but if you backflush a lot of stuff, you get a semi-standard average, right? So if I backflush all my labor, excuse me, and I left my I backflush my labor and I backflush a lot of my components, my biomass can vary. I have all my overhead that's fixed and that's standard. So really the thing that's varying in my average cost for a production item tends to be the cost of the materials. Everything else is pretty much fixed. And there's no right or wrong answer here. It's just what you guys feel more comfortable with. I've got people swear they do nothing but standard cost. I've got other people want no part of standard cost, for example. I tend to like to leave manufacturing as average because they're self-adjusting, especially in like these days where the inflation rate is crazy, where we have a lot of disruptions in pricing. So then the average will self-correct. And then we either, depending on the cost method, either capitalize that cost difference and then the average cost, or if it's standard, at least you see in a variance, and you can see the impact of that variance.
And when you do apply standard costing, you do have the ability to report on the different types of variances, right?
It's not as good as I would like at this point. So, there's a standard cost variance account. Now we know what the actual should be, and you have details behind this, but in the ledger, you pretty much get by item is the lowest thing you do. You're going to report to one variance account.
Huh.
You don't get I'm hoping they move to that where you break down material variance, labor variance, overhead variance. They kind of put everything in a single variance in this one account.
Right, because from what I've seen in the past is for fluid manufacturing companies, you would typically see input, labor, overhead, like pretty much everything type of variance. But in this case, you don't split that out, huh?
Yeah. Well, we have all that. You have all those difference on there, but in the ledger itself, like you can get the details from the production order, but you can't get the details
not from one place.
You can't get the financial records don't reflect that. You can find out the pieces if I go into a production order performance report. Let's see, what do I got here? You can see planned, all those components, actual and variant. But these cannot be coded to individual GL accounts, which is what I'm used to and would like to see in Acumatica.
Okay.
So for you to say, well, I've got a variance number of X, what does it make? What is it made up? We can calculate and show you exactly where that came from, but it won't be in your general ledger.
Right. Okay.
And that's a limitation of Acumatica. Now we just did, in fact, I was on I did a demo last Friday, and the last thing they needed, right now you can go in, if you look at these reports, there's a labor report, there's a material report. They wanted to have this production summary report run in a way that all of the detailed transactions showed underneath this, labor, material, and costing. So we just built that for them because that was if you had that, I'd buy the system. So I had my guy do it this week. So we have that report. I don't even have it in this environment, but that's available. So if you wanted to see the performance and then go out and see every material transaction, every labor transaction, and every other cost element, you could see the actuals and variances on a single report. We also have a number of, in cannabis, we have a number of different production costs and yields and other things out here. That's just open production orders. I'm trying to remember which ones out. But we will calculate the production cost at each level in detail. And this is pulled for analysis purposes, but we also have the, what we do is in fact, this is a good example here. We're showing the actual material at that level. And most systems do this. When I'm putting crude to distillate and distillate into vape cartridges, the full cost of that item that I'm consuming, the material item that I issued, goes in at material at that level. So this accumulated level breaks that out and shows you the value of labor to the whole process. So that's what this is showing here. So the labor is across all of the units in total. How much labor did I do, even if that production order was nested 3 or 4 levels deep.
John, if you go back to, I saw a yield analysis report. Yep. Is that something you could show? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's here though. So this is mostly around yield around a package, plant stuff. Let me show you. I'm just going to go to PowerPoint for a second and show. Here's one of our KPIs that we would run. This is showing by week and also by month. How much trim extracted, how much crude was projected, how much distillate was extracted and consumed, and then the production of each item. And we also can, like in cultivation, we calculate cannabinoid yield percentage based on averages, based on the actual lab results. So all that stuff can be calculated here. It's just a matter of what are you looking to do. We've got extensive analysis being pulled out of Acumatica to do that. Everybody wants to see a little different. I have a customer that has, we built a lot of stuff for them, but they have their own reporting staff. They do like 100 KPIs weekly through Power BI, getting the data directly from Acumatica. So anything you really want to get out of there can be pulled out of there. I think we got 7 minutes left.
John, can you go back to the cultivation dashboard or that summary page? Just to kind of, you know what I'm talking about, right?
This one?
It's got the visual on it, right? Yeah, this one. So I just want to make sure we kind of saw what we talked about. We talked about the strains a little bit, right?
Yeah, we only did this. We didn't do anything else, right? So for example, and again, because we don't add a lot, we don't add anything. We don't take anything away. But in forecasting, actually, I have a whole forecasting system, but here you can see we're saying, hey, we're going to use 2,000 of those great items a month, right? So I put a sales forecast in. I also could produce a production scheduling. These are things I'm going to make.
Yep.
So in this case, I need 12,000 grams of flour, right? I run MRP, and when I go into MRP display, it's going to tell me, well, grapes, how many I need to make and how often. So if I go in, that's watermelon. Let me go in and find grape.
Again, is there anything cannabis specific, or is it just the same?
No, this is standard manufacturing again. It doesn't.
Okay.
Here I've got the 4,000. I told, if I come back out here, other than a lot of the stuff is generated by the bombs and all that, I have a minimum quantity of 4,000. So it's going in. I got 2,000 each month. So you can see every 2 months I'm telling them to reorder and make 4,000. If I come in here and if I look at flour, I got to get rid of this. This is going to come in and tell me, I went the wrong way, sending. I've got to take 304 plants on 4/21 to meet that date.
Yep.
All right. So in cannabis, we have the ability to do what I call reverse MRP on that. So if you come into production order creation, you have the ability to go in and say, I'm going to take so many cuttings, and it figures out when you're going to get all the other steps. We've also started that with manufacturing. So you could come in and say, hey, I'm taking a biomass that I bought or something else, and it'll give you all the parts at each level you can make. So some people feel more comfortable with doing it from the bottom up as opposed to MRP the bottom down. So this is kind of a new thing that we're in the middle of just building out here, but it'll go and create the production orders all at once for you. You just come and say, oh, I'm buying this. I want to make this. I'm going to change them into these 2 items, and then packaged or whatever else. The kind of reverse MRP. Other than that, the add-on, as we talked about, is metric, labeling, lab results, and then the whole wholesale distribution part of cannabis for the manufacturing side and the potency stuff that we saw.
Okay, so that's what I'm hearing is a summary. When we looked at that cultivation map, the magic sauce is really on what you just described, right?
Yeah,
the labels, versus just standard functionality. It's one
right.
Gap
so
out, right?
That and all of these things, right? You may not need them, but if you're doing Leaflink and metric, that alone is huge, right? And maybe you do confident cannabis to get those things in. So, and then we keep adding these so that we're ahead of what your needs are, where people fill gaps in the industry. Now, we've got scale integrations again. We got RFID integration. If you come into cannabis, you can go into, well, a lot of times it's a flower room, but if you have barcode, you have RFID tags, you can go in and light up this room and it'll tell you everything that you just scanned, everything Acumatica, everything metric. If you read it with a barcode, you can still load and do all this. We also have metric reconciliation. So this will go out and get everything that's in metric, everything that's in Acumatica, and tell you anything that's a mismatch. So if you have stuff that's trying to keep you in sync to make sure someone didn't do something and didn't report it to metric, or you're missing an item, right? Acumatica says it's not there, metric says it is. Someone stole it and didn't process it. I'm not suggesting you people are stealing, but let's just say as 2 of my customers the past year, people have gotten fired for stealing.
Yeah.
So obviously that's going to show up, right? The physical inventory is not there, and it was not used in metric. We have no transaction that traces it here. What are you going to do, right?
Any other, beyond your kind of plug-in or module, is there any other other adjacent plugins that we need to make this operate? I mean, tax engines or whatever else may be in the industry that we may need?
We don't do taxes, right? So in most states, cannabis is not taxed, sales taxed.
Yep.
So we're not doing anything with that. You would use whatever you need for those appropriate things. You also can't ship. So, you know, we've got, let me go back to here for a second. You know, on the customer side, machine catch up, if I go into customers, you know, we have the ability to relate your license to the other license. You could do delivery days, so we would set the next shipment time if you're doing local deliveries, especially in a medical state where you just can't deliver anywhere. We're controlling all those functions out there. So other than that, and you saw on the sales order processing, the repack, the COA consolidation and delivery both at the invoice and shipment level, and then the metric manifest template. That's the value add in that side.
Okay.
All right.
I guess I got one more last question. What does your current customer base look like? Like, you know, how many customers are you currently rolled out with roughly?
I don't even know the number off the top of my head. Somewhere around 15 to 20.
15, 20. Okay.
They vary. They could be a very large integrator in Vancouver that's got 2 huge greenhouses and growing, you know, hundreds of thousand plants at a time, to medical integrators in Maryland that, you know, grow plants, typically 1,200 plants a week. And then I got a lot of people in California that do what you're going to do to some degree. They buy some level of either biomass and extract, or they're just buying distillate. And and then, you know, and obviously Canada's Health Canada, nothing to do with metric. The predominant rest of our customers are in metric states or in multi-level operators. We do have a bunch of people who are in multiple states and also do multiple brands, some of the bigger names out there. So it's a wide cannabis space out there.
I appreciate it. I know you're at time, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw that pop up. That's my next cannabis demo. So I appreciate your time today. I hope it answered the questions. I know it's when you're less sure of what you need to do. You know, our job is to make you more efficient at doing what you're doing, especially with dealing with these integrations that cause a lot of disruption to your operations, like metric.
Oh.
All right. Thank you, guys. You have a great night. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks.